Whenever we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we only focus on guilt and anger, European inhumanity and African suffering. Many see these as the true legacy of slavery. This is not the case. In order to justify the continuation of slavery, Europeans fabricated many lies. They said that Africans were savage, primitive beings, less than human, and Africa was an underdeveloped, primitive land that had made no contribution to world history or world culture. This meant, of course, that they could sell the idea of slavery as a way of civilizing Africans, and their treatment of Africans was morally no more wrong than how you treat a beast of burden. It was even posited that Africans didn't have the same nervous system as Europeans, therefore didn't feel pain when beaten. Which of course raises the question, if this were true, why beat them? The brutal colonisation of the African continent was sold as a way of developing it and bringing it into the modern era. In short, slavery and colonialism were good for Africa and for Africans. And thanks to centuries of cultural enhancement, pseudo-scientific theories, and the backing of the wealthiest and most influential of Europeans, including royalty and governments, these beliefs became embedded in the global consciousness via their various empires. People of all colours, of all nations, only saw Africa and Africans in this negative light. And this formed the basis of what we know as racism. Even though almost all of the lies, the misconceptions, the pseudo-scientific theories have been disproven and discredited, the culturally embedded beliefs remain. Indeed, one of our former Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson, wrote that European nations should invade Africa and recolonize it. It's important to note that Africans were also educated in these beliefs. Those taken as slaves were brutally forced to reject their African identity and adopt a European one. And as a security measure, they were instilled with a hatred of anything African. This ensured that should they reject their European identity, they would never revert to being African. On the continent, Africans were educated to adopt European identities with European values, European ideals, and European beliefs. They began to associate European with being advanced, being modern, and associated African with being primitive, a point of shame. So what is the real legacy of slavery? In the diaspora, millions of Africans don't know that they're African. Millions more forcefully reject even the suggestion that they may be African. In Africa, millions see being African as little more than someone born on the continent, and they strive for all things European. Slavery and colonialism have neutralized any real resistance to European supremacy over Africans by effectively ridding the world of the African identity. It divided us into British, American, French, Spanish, Dutch, etc., each loyal to our European mother country, striving for her acceptance, fighting the same prejudice, but separately and in isolation.